Hi, it's Katrina, and today I'm finally reviewing Ship of Destiny by Robin Hobb and wrapping up the Live Ship Traders trilogy, my new all-time favourite trilogy. Okay, gonna get it out of the way. Lighting is still weird in this room. I don't know how to fix it. I have like a kind of dormer window, so it shines just on here and not on the rest of my room if I'm sitting in front of it. I will fix it out, but it's actually daylight, so I'm filming anyway. And yes, that is my apology out of the way. So, Ship of Destiny is the third in the Live Ship Traders trilogy, which is the second trilogy in the Realm of the Elderlings series. So for obvious reasons, if you haven't read the first two books in the Live Ship Traders trilogy, heavy spoilers from here on in. Suffice to say, you absolutely must pick up this trilogy. I have wrap-ups for the first two books in this trilogy already up on my channel and I'll link them below. The third one absolutely delivers on everything that was set up in the first two books. All that pent-up tension, all the mysteries and little hints, and then even more hints are set up for the next few trilogies in this series. So please pick up this series. At the start of this book, almost all of our characters are in extremely perilous situations. Rain and Selden have just let loose Tintaglia the dragon. Finally, we've got dragons in this series, and she's flown off and left them and they're essentially drowning. Malta is with the satrap, and Keki, the servant girl, stranded, no idea where they are, trying to navigate the acidic Rainwild River. Wintro is still with Kennet. Cirilla is sort of setting up shop in Bingtown, navigating the difficult kind of political climate, trying to be a representative of the satrap and yet also cast off some of the negative aspects of the satrap's rule there. Really interesting stuff. So first I'm going to do a bit of a non-spoiler discussion of this book and then go into more spoilery thoughts. I'm going to put this down because I hate holding the book the whole time. What struck me the most about this whole series is the characters, especially Malta. Malta Vestra is my favourite all-time character. In the first book, she's such a child. She's so irritating, she's so up herself. She is your stereotypical bratty teenage girl who she just thinks she knows best and is a nightmare. She goes through so many changes in the second book, and towards the end of the second book I was really starting to root for her, but the third book, the strength that she shows, all the things she goes through, just by the end of it she was my absolute favourite character. In terms of character development, definitely my all-time favourite character. There's a lot of really strong, amazing female characters in this story. Althea is great. She knows what she wants and she has a lot of drive. Ronica, the grandmother, she has a lot of strength and integrity, and even though she's had a different kind of life than what Althea would want, she has been always the stay-at-home mother. She's a great character in that aspect as well because she has so much strength and integrity, and you see how much she contributes to the family despite not having her own career or income. And I think nowadays a lot of us think of women as only being effective and contributing to the household as having by being a career woman, independent lady, and Ronica is not that. However, she does have a lot of responsibility while her husband has been away for a long time. On the Vivacia, she is running things at home, and she's like a really interesting character in that way. I love her. Kefri has a lot of growth as well, sort of stripping away from her horrific husband. But yeah, Malta will just always be my favourite. There's also Etta, who has a completely different kind of strength from the Vestrit women. You know, being a prostitute to begin with and then being taken under Kennet's wing and then creating her own sort of power on the ship. But Malta just had some epic moments in this series, and oh, I love Malta. Interestingly, my affection dwindled for Wintro in this book. Wintro goes through a lot of conflicting things. In the first couple of books, you know, he's initially extremely rejecting the idea of taking away from the priesthood and becoming a sailor like his father, and then in the second book he goes through so much with being sold off and being tattooed, and that's such a horrific scene when he just realizes his dad is not going to come save him, and when he's sat down and is tattooed, it's so horrific because at the time it feels so irrevocable. He does go through still even more in this book, but he's much more under Kennet's sway. As well as the characters, the plot is absolutely incredible. It is a Robin Hobb book after all. I can obviously, still pre-spoilers, so I don't want to say too much, but I feel like everyone got their just desserts. There were so many great twists and turns and moments where you really didn't know how it was all going to work out and who was going to end up where, and who you even wanted to end up where, and who was a baddie and who was good. And the Satrap and Malta together is a really interesting, they spend quite a lot of this time of this book together. Malta being that headstrong girl, and the Satrap just imperious and awful. They're fascinating together to spend time together and sort of clash. In this book, because so much has happened with our main characters, we actually get to hear about all the other characters in from the other perspective, if you know what I mean. So you start to hear about Kennet and Winthrop as being these sort of mythical creatures and all these things that they've gone through, and that's fascinating. You know, while you're in Althea's mind, for example, and the other way around, and you hear all these stories and no one knows what's going on with the other characters. I think that's really interesting, and that was a great part of the storytelling as well. In a world like this, you know, people don't have a lot of communication with each other, but the stories that are told about them, it's not just the truth, and it gets spun, and I loved seeing that aspect throughout this book as well. There's still a lot of political intrigue in this book as well. I love the political nature of fantasy, and there's a lot of action as well, and sailing the high seas and dragons and stuff, but a lot of it is, well, the Satrap signed this treaty, and the new traders and the old traders and Cyrilla kind of trading that fine line, and that was really fascinating, and seeing the different factions that start to arise, the influence of different characters on one another, especially in Bingtown. Ronica has a lot to do with that, David Restart from previous books, their connection with him, so that was utterly fascinating as well. So into the spoilery kind of section for this book. It has actually been a little while since I read this book, so but I have still a lot of thoughts and feelings. One of the most fascinating parts of this book was Kennet. You know, I absolutely detest Kennet, but at the start of the book, I was kind of, you start to become a lot more sympathetic by him, and Robin Hobb does this very interestingly, that she starts to weave a bit of a spell. You start to see Kennet initially weaving a spell over Vivacia, and you think, oh, she's such an idiot, why is she falling for this? And then Winthrop starts to get swayed, and you're like, come on, Winthrop. And then you as the reader start to be swayed by him as well, and you see his charm and what he's trying to do, and you see enough of his backstory that you start to feel a little sorry for him, and then he rapes Althea, and you just, I mean, it's like the glass is shattered, you know, or the veil's been torn back, and you see him for what he is, this horrific man, and you can't believe how blind you were, and then you forgive Winthrop and Vivacia for being so blind as well, and luckily that all gets resolved. That was such an amazing moment, and it was so hard, but it was such an amazing moment of understanding the storytelling that was going on, and how Robin Hobb just sort of twists you up and wraps you up in these characters' lives and perspectives, and then it's all just laid bare for you, and that was amazing. And in a lot of ways, it's one of my favourite moments of the series, and it's one of the reasons why it is my all-time favourite trilogy. It's by no means romance heavy, but Rain and Malta are just the best. Rain and Malta are my all-time favourite couple. At the start, Malta was just being such a silly little girl, and Rain, I was like, why are you bothering with her? And all she really wanted was, you know, the attention, back in, like, you know, the end of the first book and throughout the second book. She just absolutely kicks ass in this book. She utterly deserves Rain by the end of it, and Rain utterly deserves her. She goes through the transition, and the moment when you realise that her scar is becoming this sort of like coronet of scales and marking her this amazing mark to show her prowess and her part among the trader families. That was such a great moment. She goes through so much because she has been such a conceited girl throughout, and then her coming to terms with this ugly scar she thinks it is, and then being totally vindicated at the end. And her and Rain are just gonna be, I mean, ultimate power couple. I can't wait. I really hope that they feature more prominently in the subsequent books. I'm sure they will in the Rainbow Chronicles. So I'm sure they will in the Rainwell Chronicles, the 4-book series that comes after the Fits in the Fool trilogy. So I'm really excited to see that, them, and just what they go on to do with their lives, because I feel like this is like, this whole trilogy, I feel like, well, I don't know, but I think that they're such awesome characters, and I really feel like they're going to go on to do so much, that this trilogy has just been like their origin story, and their origin story of being like the kick-ass main couple, and I love them. Also really happy that Althea and Brashen end up together. There's some such like swoon-worthy scenes for them in this book. Like I say, not heavy on romance, but those bits, oh, I just love them so much. I've written in my notes for this, if she ends up with Greg, I will never read a Robin Hobb book again, and I totally stand by that. Like, there was a few moments where I wasn't 100% sure that she wouldn't end up with Greg, and Greg is lovely, but come on, like, Althea and Brashen are clearly meant to be together. And the biggest moment, I take it back, the Kennett bit was not the biggest moment. The biggest moment was working out that Amber was the fool. When was I knew, but I didn't know. I think I knew in the Mad Ship. I think I knew about halfway through there. I was starting to be like, ooh, with the colouring and everything like that. And obviously there's so many things in the Farseer trilogy about fool people not knowing really if they are a man or a woman, but then obviously because it's through Fitz's eyes and Fitz sees him as a man, then going to it being Amber and being a woman, it kind of, that's how it confuses you. But all I knew, and right at the end, when, you know, Amber says, oh, I've got some friends up north I've got to go annoy, I'm like, ah! So really excited to see more of Amber, because I think that the Fool was kind of an accessory to the Farseer trilogy. Definitely fascinating character, went through so much, really interesting, but sort of more of a companion as opposed to being a character that you, I don't know, that has that many aspects to them. All you really saw is like loyalty to Fitz, and them saying like, oh well, Fitz is really important, and just staying with them, but you don't really see the that complexity, or that there's all these other things going on in their life. So now that we've seen that through Amber, and all the little connections that Amber managed to get in Bingtown, and the massive influence they had with Paragon, I can't wait to see that all play out more in the Fits and the Fool trilogy. And just talking about this more makes me want to pick up. Why have I not read Fool's Errand yet, guys? Like, this is clearly wasting my life not reading Robin Hobb constantly. I don't know, I've sort of run out of things to say. I'm just sort of rambling at this point and gushing about this series, but really, really, I wish I'd made this video closer to the time, but as I've talked about before, my life was just too crazy. I couldn't really film at that time when I just finished the book, but I just loved this trilogy. I loved the 3rd book. I said this in the Mad Ship video, that a lot of the time a second book doesn't quite live up, or it's a lull, or it's a bridge book, and it absolutely was not. So then once the Mad Ship was so amazing, I was a little bit like, oh, what if Ship of Destiny isn't as amazing? Like, what if she's nailed the 2nd book and then like fails in the 3rd, and the 3rd was just so good. Absolutely on my edge of my seat the whole time. It took me a little while to get through it, just because I like, when I'm reading a big book, I like taking little breaks and little chunks with other books in the meantime, and I was on holiday and blah blah, but I absolutely adored this book. I adore Robin Hobb. She is just the queen of fancy. I'm so lucky to have gone to see her earlier on in the year. It was actually while I was reading this book that I got to see her when she was doing her tour for Assassin's Fate, which I'm so far away from reading, but it sounded amazing from the little excerpt she read. Anyway, that's another topic, but I got this book signed. Oh, I'm just gonna count that wee bit, but it says, to Katrina, fair winds, Robin Hobb, and I was like, obviously that's a Ship's reference because I was reading this. This is the one that I gave her to sign because I was reading at the time, and it was a really great moment in my reading life and just like my life in general. I just love Robin Hobb. I really love this series. It's my all-time favourite series, all-time favourite trilogy. Thoroughly recommend. If you've got this far in the video, then you're probably either already read it or aren't bothered about spoilers and therefore are probably not going to read it, but like, it's so amazing. And yeah, thanks for watching. Subscribe to see more videos from me. I upload about once a week. You can also follow me on Goodreads, Instagram and Twitter, all of which are linked below. Thanks for watching. Bye.